We are coming on the air with what is now a deadly storm. 7 people killed by Ian in Florida. The Carolinas now bracing for devastation after seeing this storm's historic damage further south. Ian now on track to become a hurricane again tonight before it makes landfall again, with the rescue push really just beginning. Millions of people, no power. Homes torn up. Really important bridges are out, isolating some of these islands off the coast, with folks there calling this the worst storm they have ever experienced. We're bringing you wall-to-wall coverage tonight with the huge cleanup, an exclusive interview with a family who escaped the worst of the storm but cannot get home and are down to 1 can of formula now. We'll also talk with a hurricane hunter who flew right into the storm later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and NBC News can now confirm at least 7 deaths from Ian. We're looking at this very real and very new threat from this tropical storm now, which may not stay a tropical storm for long. Picking up steam, expected to become a hurricane again in just a couple of hours. By tomorrow, set to slam into South Carolina. And when you look at the radar, you see it right now. It's in the Atlantic Ocean, sort of slingshotting around Florida. It's what it's doing, right? It's acting like a slingshot. That's what the land is doing as this storm makes its way north. As that happens, we are getting a split screen from Florida. Take a live look right now at the Atlantic side. That's what it looks like. The other side, that's the cleanup, with the Gulf Coast absolutely crushed. Ian just ripping off the roofs of homes in Placida. Millions of people stuck in their houses with nowhere to go. In Lee County, some houses are on fire because of all those open wires. 2.5 million people in the state just don't have power right now. The main road from Sanibel Island to the mainland has now collapsed. That is the only way in or out. You are not getting in or out with that in your way. Okay, more than 14 inches of rain fell in only 12 hours, making this a 1 in 1,000-year weather event. That's a real term meteorologists use to describe things that shouldn't be happening very often. We're getting some really dramatic video of rescues, like one that we're about to show you in Naples right here. President Biden today saying at FEMA headquarters there's potential for significant loss of life. And officials are also worried about what's coming next. You see Charleston, South Carolina, they are not taking any chances, prepping those sandbags, getting ready for what could be the first hint of the storm by the morning commute. And in Central Florida, it is all about the water levels, with the flooding making streets into rivers in Orlando. And in Jacksonville, the ocean is basically leaking into the city. Jacksonville is where our Shaq Brewster is. And Shaq, low tide right now, but take a look at what it looked like at high tide. Next one's coming around 11 or so. The big concern now is the flooding coming up the St. Johns River, meeting this water being pushed out from the ocean.
Yeah, it's the St. Johns River and the threats from this river. That's why you have local officials saying that while they may be breathing a sigh of relief here in Jacksonville, they are not yet out of the woods. And what you keep hearing from local officials is they compare what you're seeing here to what they saw about 5 years ago with Hurricane Irma, in the sense that they are not getting that impact. Hurricane Irma, you saw hundreds of people rescued. You saw tens of millions of dollars of damage in the downtown area as there was significant flooding. Fortunately, they've escaped those effects this time around, but it's because of the St. John River and the fact that we have several more high tides until they're out of the clear, until it reaches a safe level, that officials are saying the threat is not clear. They're telling people to keep your guard up and don't look out and see that the rain has stopped and the wind has died down and think everything's okay, Hallie.
We're looking at live pictures, Shaq, where we were just a moment ago. That is what it looks like live on the coast where you are. I know that earlier you were under an overpass, right? I imagine you're still close to there. Right. What's the game plan for people tonight? This is Florida's biggest city. There's nearly 1 million folks who live there.
Yeah, and one thing that the mayor told me as I was interviewing him live on your show on MSNBC a little bit earlier is he said that he's asking people who were voluntarily evacuating. That's what they called for here in the Jacksonville area, voluntary evacuations. He's asking for those people to stay away, especially in where that shot was, which I believe was along the beach there, and all of these low-lying areas along the river. Because that high tide is coming in the overnight hours, he's saying it's just not safe. So they're asking people to stay off the roads, to stay cool a little bit, you know, kind of stay hunkered down despite the conditions that you currently see right now, Hallie.
And just south, St. Johns County has opened up a bunch of hurricane shelters. One thing that I've noticed as I've talked to officials throughout the state, some of them were concerned that they didn't see enough people go into shelters. They actually wanted to see those shelters filling up more because it would suggest people are somewhere safe, at least. They're not trying to stay at home. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, there were more people using those shelters. And one difference that you see between St. Johns County, which is just the neighboring county south of where we are right now, which is Duval County, there they had mandatory evacuations. The entire city of St. Augustine was under a mandatory evacuation. And that's where you're seeing some of those dramatic pictures of the surge, the storm surge. You saw some vehicles underwater. That is where a lot of that was happening. And it's because of the water that they were expecting there. So, yes, the shelters are open in both counties. Shelters are available. People are using those shelters, but we do know that some people did stay back. Fortunately, at this point, in this area, that didn't cost them. But again, local officials are saying stay off the beaches, stay back from those low-lying areas because things can change very quickly. And while they may be breathing a sigh of relief right now, they said they are not out of the woods just yet, Hallie.
Shaq Brewster live for us in Jacksonville. Shaq, thank you. Let's go now to meteorologist Samara Theodore. The National Hurricane Center has just given us a 5 p.m. update. What is it?
That 5 p.m. update right now. It is officially a hurricane again. We've got a Category 1 hurricane, so we're rocking and rolling now, and we've got to get our eyes set on our friends in South Carolina and down the Georgia coastline, too, okay? So here's the setup. Right now, we see the center. It's not well put together, but it's still packing a punch, and right now, the center is just off the coast of Daytona Beach. A lot of the heaviest rain bands is still at open water, but we're going to start to see that pushing into Savannah pretty soon here. 70 miles per hour. It's picked up a little bit of speed to the northeast at 10 miles per hour, but we've seen storms move much faster than this. So as it does that, it could actually strengthen a little bit more to getting towards more of a moderate Cat 1 before making landfall. Here's the latest timing on this. At this current speed and trajectory, we have it arriving in between this cone of uncertainty with Charleston sitting just to the east, the west of that main line there. And that's going to be Friday at 2 p.m. So that could come in a little bit earlier, a little bit later, give or take an hour or two, based on its positioning and how far north it heads in. This is still a critical time, right? So we're coming off the rush hour, and now we're moving into lunchtime frame. Maybe we're picking up the kiddos from school. So we're going to have to listen to those city officials in case they decide to close schools along the South Carolina border, after which it moves as a remnant into the Carolinas, pushing deep inland, bringing heavy rain to areas like West Virginia, into North Carolina, and then further on into the mid-Atlantic. Here's a look at the flash flood risk. More than likely, we're going to see flash flooding along the coastline, areas like Charleston. We have Myrtle Beach here, Isle of Palms down there, even some heavy rain coming down near Tybee Island, just off the coast of Savannah. And, this is coming off the heels of seeing numbers like 28+ inches just south of Daytona Beach, Florida. So this is a big rainmaker along with the storm surge. I know I'm jumping all over the place here, but the storm is so massive, it's impacting so many cities. And I want to highlight this because you're going to be seeing visuals coming in of St. Augustine, where downtown just looks like it's completely underwater. That storm surge rode in as that storm was departing from the coastline in Florida, Hallie. So because of that, we are seeing alerts continue to light up the East Coast. And the last thing I'm going to mention here is the storm surge. We've got the rain we have to deal with, and then we have the 4 to 7 foot storm surge that's possible near Charleston, South Carolina. But again, that cone of uncertainty is reaching south of Charleston and just to the north. So I just want everybody in South Carolina to get ready for Ian. We see the damage it's making, Hallie, as just a tropical storm on the East Coast, and now it's getting ready to hit as a Cat 1.
Well, and what's also disturbing here, Samara, and I fear that we may see more of this to come. We are, as you were giving your report there, is Ian is now again a hurricane. We learned of 2 more storm-related deaths in Sarasota County, according to a spokesperson for the sheriff's office there, increasing the number of people who have been killed by what is a deadly and devastating hurricane. Now, Samara, thank you. We're going to check back in with you in just a little bit. And listen, as Samara has explained, yeah, we're jumping around because this storm is huge. The storm is huge. There's damage everywhere, especially in what some officials are calling the kind of ground zero of the impact of Ian, and that is near Fort Myers. Took a direct hit. The city's mayor says it basically looks like a war zone. At one point, you had whole neighborhoods just submerged underwater. Look at some of these images here. Upper left, that's the bridge that connects Sanibel Island and Captiva Islands, really popular tourist vacation destination spots to the rest of the Florida mainland. It's crumbled, right? Look at the power of the water and the wind and the storm surges. Search rescue teams are still trying to find people who are missing. CNBC's Perry Rossum is in Lee County, where this is all happening. Perry, let me just start. Tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what it's been like for you there.
So we spent our day in Fort Myers, one of the worst hit areas where we had neighborhoods that have been flooded. You have neighborhoods that are separated by water, and the only way to get around is by some of these trucks that have higher suspension so you can get through the water. What we're seeing, or what we're not seeing down there, really for the most part, any real type of firefighters or emergency personnel. So you have everyday people who are driving their trucks, going through water, and have people in the back of their trucks where they're taking them from wet areas or areas that are surrounded by water to drier land. We met one man today named Kevin Ott, who told us yesterday during the storm he saved 16 people on his own, in his own pontoon boat, along with his 3 children, his 2 sons and his daughter.
Wow.
They were just going through neighborhoods on this pontoon boat. He said the water was 10 feet high in some places, and he saved 3 members of his own family. He said that they were hiding in a canoe inside of their house, and he was able to get them out. This is a guy who's dealt with hurricanes for the most part of his career. He works with boats as a living, and this is a guy who just started breaking down in tears after witnessing what he witnessed yesterday. We met one woman who refused to get off the ground. Her legs were so sore from just standing through Hurricane Ian for hours. She said the water started rising. She was inside of her house along with her husband, and they put on life jackets, right? They put on life jackets inside of their house. Their pool table flipped over, so they're standing on the beams of their pool table for hours as the water is going higher and higher and higher. I asked her, how high did the water get? And she went right below her chin. She was standing there with her husband until somebody with another boat, another Good Samaritan, came over and rescued them, Hallie. Another thing we want to mention, too, is that there's no cell service down there. So you have people that are entirely isolated. They have no idea what's going on outside of their own little house. They don't know where the shelters are. They don't know who to ask for help or where to go for help. The woman we mentioned, who is in the house alongside of her husband wearing life jackets on top of their pool table, she said, look, FEMA, what we're hearing from FEMA is go online to figure out where to go. But as she said, we don't have online, Hallie.
That's right. I have chills listening to you, Perry, talk about some of these stories here. And then I think about the images we've seen of the causeway. That makes rescue so much harder. I had seen one shot of a chopper. It looked like a federal, frankly, a National Guard chopper that had landed on the coast there, trying to get some folks in to help at this point. And you have hundreds of engineers making sure that other bridges in Southwest Florida are safe, too. This is such a huge operation. The scale of it boggles the mind. But then those personal stories that you're talking about really bring it home.
And there's so many children out here, too, that we want to mention, too, in these neighborhoods who are trying to figure out what's going on. You have girls that are 9, 10, 11 years old asking us, like, hey, do you know about this place? Do you know about that place? And at the same time, they are driving around through the floodwaters on their bicycles. So you have this interesting side-by-side of these kids wondering what's going on in their own town that they're not too sure of, as they're still trying to enjoy their own time. Seeing it on the ground and seeing how frustrated these families are, too, with trying to get information and trying to figure out where to go at this point. Remember, too, many of them haven't slept. They've been up since the storm hit, trying to figure out where to go overnight, and now at this point it's just pure exhaustion.
At this point, do people even have a sense of timeline of when they can start to get back to some sense of normalcy, Perry, or are they just riding this out?
Hallie, they don't know if they can ever go back to where they live ever again. They have no idea if the county will even allow them to rebuild there. The woman that we mentioned, the one that was on the pool table in the life jacket, she said, look, I grew up around the water. My husband's a captain on a boat. I am done with water. I am done with boats. After what she just went through, she said, that's it, totally done.
I mean, I hear that. Perry Russom, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for bringing us those stories on the ground. I want to bring in somebody who understands what people in Fort Myers are going through, because he is the mayor there, Mayor Kevin Anderson, who is joining us now. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us. And let me start with the status of things in your city as we speak tonight.
Well, we have about 80% of our residents are without electricity. So many of them also without water. Our crews have been out all day long clearing the streets. We've started the recovery operation. Our fire department rescued probably upwards of 200 people last night.
Do you anticipate more rescues? Are they trying to get out to other people? And the fact that we are seeing the causeway down, et cetera, I have to imagine that's making things harder, obviously.
Yeah, we're actually about 18 miles or so north of the causeway. So that's Lee County and Sanibel. Our little town, we had about four feet of flooding in our downtown area.
Have you, as far as any potential loss of life, I know you mentioned a number of people rescued. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing any injuries? Can you help give us a sense of what it's like on the ground? In
the city of Fort Myers, we have not experienced any loss of life as of yet. Outside the city area, I can't answer for that. I've heard that there's been several, but I don't know for a fact.
The city of Fort Myers, your city, is asking people don't leave home today while that stay-at-home sort of warning is in effect, literally sending out a message in all caps, do not go out, right? It couldn't be more clear. Have people largely heeded that warning?
Unfortunately, no, and they've really put themselves at risk because as you're driving through town, there are no traffic lights, there are down power lines, there are lines that are close to coming down, there are traffic lights that are ready to fall. There are trees that are leaning over, pose a real threat. When we have floodwaters like this, there's a mixture of what's in there. It's not really healthy to be in that water.
What is your message to people in your community who woke up today to see so much devastation, to have ahead of them such a long road, as you well know, to even beginning to get back to a recovery?
Well, this is not our first storm, and people who have been here know we are resilient. We're strong, we bounce back, and we will bounce back from this, and we will get through this. And together, our city crews are out there working tirelessly, long hours, to get the city back up and running.
I know so many people are grateful to them for doing that. We are grateful to you, Mr. Mayor, for joining us here tonight on NBC News Now. Mayor Kevin Anderson of Fort Myers, thank you. I want to get to Blaine Alexander now, who is live for us in Orlando. And Blaine, Hurricane Ian now, no longer a tropical storm anymore, back to a hurricane. And we've now learned that in all, so far, 9 people have been killed because of this storm. Tell me what it's like where you are. I understand the flooding was a real concern, but the water there is starting to recede.
Flooding is absolutely a real concern. That's really what officials have been warning all day. Yes, the water is starting to recede, and we'll get to that in a second. But I do think it's important to say that officials are still telling you the same thing that we've been hearing all day. If you don't have to get out, don't do it. And that's because of roads, quite frankly, like the one that we're seeing right here behind me. Now, Hallie, a couple of hours ago when last we spoke, we saw the water a lot closer to this officer car than it is right now. That is the good news. Yes, the water is starting to recede. In fact, earlier today, it was right here on the sidewalk where I'm standing. That's certainly no longer the case. But when you drive around Orlando, as we've been doing today, you see a couple of things. One, you see rescue vehicles driving, but they're also kind of pulling behind them rescue boats. And that shows that there are still a number of water rescues going on. In fact, when I spoke with an assistant chief who's kind of been leading a lot of these rescues throughout the day, she says that one thing that's made it so difficult is so many of them are happening at the same time. So we're still seeing those boats. We're still seeing people who need to be pulled out. At this point, though, it's not from homes or mobile homes as it was earlier today or elderly living facilities, but now it's people whose cars have gotten waterlogged, people who have tried to drive through those floodwaters and are not able to make it. We've also seen a number of tow trucks to that very point. But the third thing that we've seen are streets like these. In fact, we've come up against a few of them when we were trying to get to our live shot earlier. So I can certainly tell you that there are parts of roads that are shut down. In fact, parts of the busy Florida Turnpike are also still shut down at this point. Parts of I-4 are also still shut down. So yes, the water's receding, but it's still impeding traffic. It's also worth noting that all the roads leading into the Orlando airport are currently closed. According to the airport website, the airport itself is shut down, so nobody's trying to get in and out, but also the roads around it are still waterlogged as well. So we're still talking about traffic difficulties here in this area, Hallie, even though, yes, the rain has stopped and the waters are starting to recede. That's the good news.
To one of the points that you're making about people trying to get through the water, let me show some of this incredible video from our Orlando affiliate there, our station in Orlando. This is Tony Atkins, who works there, rescuing a woman who tried to drive through the flooding here. You can see what this looks like. This is, again, not a first responder. This is literally, this is just a good Samaritan, right? Somebody there in Orlando that works for the station.
Who treks through.
Holding her on his back, trying to get her out. It's unreal.
Waded into the water.
Go ahead, Blaine, yeah.
And I think what's interesting there, Hallie, is that she said that she was a nurse. She was driving to work. This isn't somebody who just decided to defy orders and get out and drive. She told our affiliate that she's a nurse. She was trying to get to work. You know, she, of course, underestimated just the power of those floodwaters, and her car was swept away. And so I really kind of think that also speaks to just kind of what we're seeing here in Orlando. There are people who need to get places, who do need to get places. Again, before these waters receded, certainly a lot more dangerous out there on the roads than they are right now. But that is the perfect example of why officials are saying stay inside if at all possible, because you do still have incidents like that could happen with the standing water that's out here.
Blaine, I know you're covering Central Florida and the Orlando area now. Folks who are familiar with our show and familiar with your work know that you are based in Atlanta, in Georgia. The coast there is set to be the next place that is impacted by what is now Hurricane Ian, along with the coast of South Carolina.
Yeah, and Georgia has spent much of the week under a state of emergency, something that Governor Brian Kemp declared earlier in anticipation of this storm. We know that there are a number of trips happening down there to South Georgia that are being canceled, for instance. So we're kind of talking about those islands and the areas right there that are certainly looking at taking a harder hit and already looking for assistance in advance of what is appearing to be a continually strengthening storm, stronger than weakened, then strengthened back to a hurricane as it barrels toward that area.
Blaine, Alexander, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you being on the ground there. I want to bring in now Cody and Keisha Harrington, who evacuated to Fort Lauderdale with their newborn, their parents, their pets. You're trying to get home to Port Charlotte. First of all, Cody and Keisha, how are you? How are you doing?
We're managing right now. The most important thing is that we have our whole family here with us, my parents, my dad is handicap bound right now, and then our newborn 2-month-old baby. So just having our family, we're happy that we're safe and prayers are working.
Can you tell me what your experience was as Ian was barreling toward your town of Port Charlotte there on the Gulf Coast? Did you know immediately you were going to get in and drive east?
No, our first thought was to hunker down. Never experienced a hurricane. We just moved here 3 weeks ago, and figured that we would sit tight with everybody else. And as soon as all the zones started to be evacuated, I told my wife and my parents right away that we just need to start headed east.
And everybody did, right? Everybody got on board with that plan?
Yep, right away. We made sure we grabbed every important document we had. Obviously, you can't take too much, but the little water we did have, the baby formula that we did have, and then my dad's medical supplies and wheelchair, and got right out.
And Fort Lauderdale you picked because it was east and you could find a hotel? Was that the reason there?
It was pretty much the only resort that we could find that was handicap accessible and pet friendly. It was all we could find.
And you're paying for that, what, out of your own money?
Yeah.
That's correct.
How long can you stay there?
So right now we were able to extend. Money-wise, I mean, we just got to go with the flow, really, and we're taking it day by day, trying to hear more from our neighbors on the condition of our house, but I do know there's the power outage and all that, so we obviously can't go there and live there right now, but if we can locate a closer hotel that's able to accept our pets and my dad as well, then we will do so we can check the conditions of our house.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is your, I don't know your newborn's name.
This is Brooklyn.
Hi, Brooklyn. Oh my goodness. Hi, Sweet Pea. She's on formula and you're down to what, your last can?
Yeah, I actually I walked to 3 different stores and I found a different brand, but it's still the sensitive that she takes. So we're hoping that she tolerates it because, yeah, we have like a bottle left of her normal.
Did you ever imagine that you would be sitting here going through something like this after having moved to this state less than a month ago?
No.
Not at all.
I don't even think we realized that it was as bad as it was until the day that we left, the day right before Ian came.
Why not?
All of our neighbors that have lived there for 30 years or so were not scared. They said this happens all the time. You know, don't be worried about it. Put your shutters down. And then the day before, they said they were all leaving. So we thought we should leave.
I imagine no regrets about leaving?
No, not at all. No, we're definitely happy we left.
Do you feel... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. We're on a community Facebook page, and we've seen some of the houses in our neighborhoods, and the roof caved in. Someone was stranded outside. Their front window broke and all the debris was coming into their house, and they were just pleading for help.
Do you feel like you're getting enough support from state, local, federal officials on a personal level, I'm talking about, for what you need to get through this?
We haven't really checked too much in on our state help and support, but friends and family back at home in Illinois and Wisconsin have definitely been checking in on us, praying for us. And the main talk that I've had with a couple of friends back at home is everything's replaceable and people aren't. So just to have our family here with us, that's the most important thing.
What is your message, before I let you go, for people all around the country, all around the world, who are looking at some of the images of destruction in Port Charlotte, where you live, and are thinking about the folks who live in that community? What do you want them to know?
Just keep in touch with family and friends. The main thing is pray and come together and work together, and we can all solve this issue and help and build back a better community, and just stick together, keep in touch with everybody.
Yeah, keep trying if you can't get through. There's a lot of places that either cell phones aren't working or they just don't have the power to communicate. So just keep trying so that we know who's missing.
Cody, Keisha, and baby Brooklyn there, who is just a gem. I'm so glad that you are okay. I'm so glad your dad, your parents are doing okay, and of course your pets too. I appreciate your time. A lot of people, like I said, around the country thinking about you, sending you strength. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you much.
That's the micro, right? That's the personal story. That's the face of what people are going through down in Florida as Hurricane Ian. Again, Hurricane Ian now has passed over. It is going to hit the Carolina coast, but not before we saw the devastation, not just in Fort Myers, not just in Cape Coral, but in Port Charlotte, where they're from. Those two, there are thousands of stories similar to theirs. And the road to recovery is not measured in weeks or months. It is years. That's after we've seen storm surge at its worst, according to what one county commissioner of Collier County, Rick LaCastro, told me that his community experienced. Nearly 80% of people there do not have power tonight, yet again. They don't have clean water. They don't have safe water either. They've got to boil their water for the next 48 hours, if they can figure out how to do that. First responders are still trying to find people who need help after this catastrophic flooding. And we have seen so many heroic rescues. Ali Velshi is joining us now on the phone because he is on the road. Ali, I understand you're in Collier County. You are making your way south, I think, to see some of the damage, to get a sense of what's going on. Tell me what you're looking at out your window.
I'm actually going north. I'm heading toward Lee County. Yeah, I'm heading toward Lee. We have just heard word from the Florida Department of Emergency Management that there have been over 500 rescues in Charlotte and Lee County today. That's these people who are trapped. I mean, yesterday you and I were talking in Collier County, which is Naples. There have been 30 rescues, and Collier sort of felt that they had a good handle on it, so they were redirecting some of the 911 calls from Lee County, which is Fort Myers, which got hit quite badly by this, to Collier for assistance. So we do know that there are 9 confirmed deaths. We believe that there are more than that, but there isn't a state number that is coming out yet. But we do know that there are a great deal of rescues. What we're seeing is power outages. Collier County is still without power. Most parts of it are, which means that there are police and National Guard all over the place helping to direct traffic. They're trying to clear roads. We've seen a lot of municipal vehicles which are sort of pushing roads, pushing debris off of roads. There's a lot of National Guard help around here. In fact, that there have been 5,000 National Guardsmen activated, 2,000 from neighboring states, and we know that we have upward of 40,000 electrical workers who are standing by. You know how that works, Hallie. These electrical workers come in on convoys from all over the country. They're, in this case, as far as Minneapolis, they come and they stay at hotels or motels, and then as soon as the winds are down, they get out there and start fixing the electrical lines. That has begun because the winds are completely down. It's completely dry now here in most of Collier County, most of Naples. So that's the situation as we're walking out. It's a bright, sunny day. People are around. Your last guests were talking about hotels that allow pets in. I was in one of those where lots of people have come, because if you have to get out of your house and you have pets, you are limited as to where you can stay.
That's right. Not everybody takes that.
That's right. Pets and a newborn, like, that's kind of remarkable. So that's the stuff you have to think about, that this is not sort of everyday, people who just have, regular lives. There are a whole lot of people with health issues, with health sensitivities, with newborn babies, with elderly parents. I spoke to somebody who has 95-year-old parents who had just moved to the Barrier Island. They weren't there at the moment, but he was saying at the age of 95, they weren't going to evacuate when they had to. And that's the kind of thing that we're worried about. We're still trying to figure out who's where. We don't have a full picture. As of now, 9 confirmed fatalities.
Hallie Velshi, stay safe on the road there. We appreciate your reporting from quite literally out your car window. Thank you. Let me bring in now Naples Fire Chief Pete DeMaria. Chief DeMaria, thank you for being with us. Talk to us about the reality on the ground there now that, as Hallie has described, it is dry, the storm has passed, the rebuilding is just beginning.
Yeah. Today was the first positive day in a group of many days that are coming in front of us. We were able to get back on the street. We were able to start clearing the streets for our community and for our first responders to respond to emergencies around our town. It's been a difficult couple of days, though, with the storm waters and the surge coming in so strong in Naples. We certainly feel fortunate that we're at a point today where we can start turning the corner and going in a more positive direction.
We heard Hallie Velshi, my colleague there at NBC News, report that some 500-plus rescues have happened across the state. Help us understand what's going on in the rescue effort there. I know 911 got a lot of emergency calls last night. One of your fire stations flooded. We've shown that video. I think we showed it for the first time on this air live 24 hours ago. How much of an impact is that having on your ability to do your job?
Well, during that part of the hurricane, we could not respond. And so we had people in our community that were calling for assistance, and we couldn't get there. Not only because our station was flooding, but we just could not get our vehicles out. The surge was so deep, we couldn't get to them. And I know we warned the community that if you're evacuated and you stay, we may not be able to get there, but we're dedicated to service here in Naples. And we were going to do our very best to get out there and try to serve our community no matter what. But when this happened, we had to put that on hold. We made a list, and today we've gone to all the homes that have called us. We've done those welfare checks, and we found everybody to be okay.
That's a good thing. How long have you lived in the Naples area, Chief?
33 years.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Never. I've been on the fire department the entire time. I've been here from Hurricane Andrew through every storm that's hit Southwest Florida, and this was the worst by far. And if I could say, storm surge, we listen to it almost every time we have a hurricane. The weather and meteorologists talk about storm surge, but it never seems to hit. And so I think that forms a little complacency for us. And I think it did a little bit with us this time too. It's just the right atmosphere for it. And we just got caught on this one.
Chief Pete DeMaria, thank you so much, Chief, for being with us. Really appreciate your time. Thanks. Coming up, we're going to get an update from one flooded neighborhood in Central Florida, plus the latest forecast and more on where Ian is expected to make that second landfall tomorrow. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We just showed you one place that was drying out, cleaning up, beginning to from Hurricane Ian. Let me take you to another place now that is not at all dry. Once in a 1,000-year rain from this storm hitting the Atlantic coast of Florida now, with some people in nearby Flagler County being told to get out now because you could see peak flooding there overnight. Jesse Kirsch, I want to take you there live in Central Florida. Tell me what you're seeing, Jess.
Yeah, so Hallie, we've been talking about for the last 24 hours or so the concern about rainfall here. It wasn't so much the wind gusts, it was the rain. And officials earlier today said we only saw about half as much rain as we were expecting could dump on this area, but clearly that was more than enough to flood some neighborhoods. I'm going to have our photographer, Tony, push in on what you see in the background there, including a basketball hoop. And that's a good reference point for measurement because we know that a standard basketball hoop, the rim should be about 10 feet off the ground, right? Give or take. That gives you an idea of how deep the water is out there right now. My guess would be somewhere around 3 to 4 feet. That's obviously just a guesstimate based on what's going on here, but clearly there are street signs submerged. Homes appear to be partially underwater here, and we know from officials that about 30 people were rescued from this area. And right behind me here, Part of what is in this neighborhood are mobile homes. And that is something that officials had been worried especially about, made a point of stressing that they wanted people who live in those homes to seek shelter at hardened structures. So that was one of the big concerns with Ian making its way to Orlando. And you can see this area has been decimated. And for context, we're at the bottom of a sloping street here. So clearly water had no place to go. And also you can see this rock. We took a look at this rock when we first got here around 3 p.m. Eastern time, so 2.5 hours later, and the water really has not receded beyond that point, even though at this point we are not seeing any real rainfall. It's still misting a little bit. The winds have largely subsided, and we do expect conditions to continue improving here. But right now, according to officials, more than 200,000 customers are in the dark. And one of the issues for crews who are trying to repair various types of infrastructure here is that we are still concerned about wind gusts. And if the winds pick up above a certain level, that recovery work has to be put on pause. So that is one of those ongoing challenges here. But thankfully, even though there are widespread power outages in this area, it is cooler than it was yesterday. So this isn't one of those situations where people are going to be concerned, I would think, as much about getting the air conditioning going. And officials are not reporting any kind of water outages at this point. And that is obviously huge for people, both for bathing and being able to get drinking water as well, Hallie.
Jesse Kirsch live for us there in Orlando. Jesse, thank you. I want to bring in now Peter Robbins from Florida Power and Light, where they are trying to get power back on to a ton of people, 2.5 million of them. Peter, I'm glad you're with us. We just had my colleague Jesse reporting from Orlando about the power outages there. Some places are going to be harder to get to, obviously, because of flooding, trees down, et cetera. Is it even safe for your crews to be up yet? What are you seeing?
It depends on where you are, Hallie. In some parts of the state, the weather has already cleared, and we've been restoring power throughout the day today. But obviously, as we were just talking about, as Jesse was just saying, in that like Daytona, Flagler County area, still some heavy rain, still a lot of flooding. So not only are we dealing with the winds, but we're dealing with localized flooding and the storm surge we had. So a lot of weather danger still out there, and those things can slow our restoration process. But we have started restoration of power outages in earnest. We have about 1.2 million people out right now. We've already restored almost 800,000, so we've certainly been very busy, but we're laser focused on the 1.2 million who don't have power.
Of those people, talk to me about timeline. How long does it take, will it take, do you anticipate, for most of those folks to get the lights back on?
You know, we've already started reconnecting many, and we're continuing to do that. We'll work overnight. We'll have a ton of folks working tomorrow, 21,000 people working to support FPL customers and get the lights back on. We'll provide those timelines, too, as we get our arms around the damage a little bit more. We're still trying to get in some of those super hard-hit areas on the West Coast near Fort Myers. It's just not safe for our crews to get in there yet. So as the floodwaters go down and we have a better ability to kind of eyeball the damage and see what's going on, we'll provide timelines and let folks know when they can expect the power back.
The governor has said that some places are going to need to have the electrical systems basically totally rebuilt. That seems like an absolutely huge undertaking. That is a years-long project, right? Not months or weeks. Help us understand that.
Yeah, Hallie, that's probably true. We are probably going to be rebuilding parts of the grid in certain areas, so we can get the power reconnected in those areas. That's not going to take years, but to fully rebuild the structures and the homes and the businesses that have been damaged by this storm surge, that can certainly linger. And there are definitely going to be scenarios where we can provide power to an area, but the structure's just not ready to receive it. They still have to do safety checks and replace wiring and do other things. So it is going to be a long process. Rest assured, for the folks who have friends or loved ones or live on that part of Florida, our hearts go out to you, but we are all over this. We're going to be working around the clock to get everybody reconnected as soon as we're able to.
Peter Robbins from Florida Power and Light, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it. So we talked about where Ian is, right, where this now Hurricane Ian is, slingshotting around the edge of Florida, basically, and it's heading towards Georgia and the coast of the Carolinas. People in that area, they are going to be feeling the storm's impact tomorrow and through the weekend. We saw some schools and bridges shutting down near Savannah as city leaders there tell people who are experiencing homelessness in that area, get to a shelter as soon as you can. Watch.
Hi, I'm Andrew Goldstein here in Richmond Hill, where we are starting to see some fairly big waves on the Ogeechee River. I want you to take a look right over here with the wind whipping over the water. The swells are starting to get pretty big. We got boats bobbing up and down. A lot of the owners in this particular marina actually removed their boats or moved them upriver a day or two ago. Now, these swells are in large part due to the north to northeast winds. If you look at the flag right above me, it's pretty much ironed out directly to the north. There's nothing coming from the direction behind me to block those winds. No forests, no large buildings, nothing to prevent the wind from coming right over the water and making big impact right here in this marina. So as we go on throughout the day into the evening hours in Richmond Hill, that wind is going to be something to look for along the Ogeechee.
Our thanks to Andrew for that report. We've also just learned from our weather team that the window for landfall tomorrow for Hurricane Ian, its second landfall, right, is going to be between 1 and 3 in the afternoon Eastern time, right near the Charleston area near Folly Beach. You're going to see wind gusts starting to pick up mid-morning, basically. We are going to have continuing live coverage of that, of course, tomorrow here on NBC News Now. But tonight, we've got an update on the ground in Pinellas Park when we come back. We are back now with our continuing coverage of Hurricane Ian, which is making its way toward the Carolina coast, set to make landfall there tomorrow midday. I want to bring in Steve Patterson, who is in Pinellas Park in Florida, just northwest of St. Petersburg. They were set to evacuate. That order was lifted this morning. This on your screen is obviously not Steve Patterson, but it is a good example of the work that's being done, Steve, where you are to get power back on.
Yeah, that's right. And we wanted to start on this because, Hallie, as you know, I think I've been talking to you a few times today. One of the biggest scenes that we've seen is the one like I'm at. This tree has been down literally all day. This road has been blocked off literally all day because there is an active power line down. Finally, after maybe 8-10 hours, they're able to get workers up in those buckets to clear this out. First, they have to deactivate this line. Then they can finally cut down this tree. Some of that work was done a little bit earlier with the homeowners. They cleared the front. But as you can see, it's into the tree on top of the power line. They weren't able to do this because it simply wasn't a priority. So think about that. A dangerous situation where this active power line has been down all day was not a priority for the entire day. It speaks to how much of this is scattered throughout the county, throughout this area, throughout the state. Still, probably about 120,000 customers in Pinellas County, where I am, still without power. If you expand out to Tampa Bay, it's something more like 500,000. And then, of course, you know, the entire state of Florida, 2.5+ million people with no power. Power still such a low priority because, you know, you got to look at order of operations, right? Loss of life, search and rescue, that's ongoing as we speak. Confirmed deaths are now starting to come out. Following that, it's clearing scenes like this, dangerous scenes, and then it's getting power restored to people. Some people are going to have to wait a long time for that, days, if not weeks, if not maybe months in some scenarios when the damage is so bad. So I can't show you the worst of the damage that we've saw in Florida, but I can show you probably one of the most typical scenes that you're going to see across the state, which is annoying and which is terrible and which is dangerous in some situations. But people here are very thankful that they are not suffering what their neighbors are. And some of them you're even leaving for those areas to try to help out because they keep seeing those images and they're so heartbroken by it. Hallie? It
is interesting, Steve, because you're at a place that is starting to open back up. The evacuation order lifted. There's a bridge that connects where you are in this kind of peninsula to the rest of the state that is now just recently opened back up. What are you hearing from people as they are starting to make their way back home, or as they are starting to sort of see what is happening in their community?
That Sky Bridge was such a signifier to everybody here that everything's going to be okay. I think people feel heartened. I spoke to this woman who had a tree on the other side of this tree that almost landed on her daughter's car, could have crushed her daughter, could have crushed her house. She was smiling when she came out to speak to me because she's been seeing the images that, you know, we've all been seeing in Fort Myers and Naples and the areas that were more hard hit. But still, you know, there's some trepidation that, you know, people are coming back to find a street that is blocked off, so they can't even get back to their homes. Other people are being asked to stay in their homes that have no power. So, of course, an inconvenience. People feel terrible. People don't like it. But they do feel also heartened for the fact that this wasn't the target of the storm, which it was predicted to be some 24 hours before that storm made landfall. Hurricane Ian, all the modeling had it landing here. That didn't happen, so we avoided the surge, we avoided the flooding. Wind damage and power outages are what's left. They're still terrible, they're still dangerous, but a whole lot to be thankful for here. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, live for us there in Pinellas Park. Thank you. Coming up, Hurricane Ian is affecting travel, not just in Florida, but all across the country. We've got the latest numbers. Look at this with our Tom Costello next. President Biden visiting FEMA today to meet with leaders there and to reassure folks in Florida that they have the country's full support. He is going to make his way down there, not right now, but when conditions start to get better. For now, he says the federal government will cover 100% of the cost to clear debris and to save lives. Just within the last 2 hours, I spoke with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, which, of course, oversees FEMA, that agency, about how FEMA plans to work with Florida state and local officials to support the recovery. Watch. Are Florida state officials working with FEMA in a productive way? Do you see any roadblocks to delivering that aid?
We are working hand in glove. This is not a time for politics. This is a time for a united response to the needs of people whose lives are in peril, whose homes are being destroyed. This is all in. This is an American response to a natural disaster.
I want to bring in Marcus Coleman, a senior FEMA official who's worked on response teams for many hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, Maria. So, Marcus, how does Ian compare, and what is your biggest focus now?
Thank you for having me on tonight, Holly. So Ian is a catastrophic event. And like any natural hazard, natural disaster, for that individual, that family, that household, this is really catastrophic for them. As mentioned earlier, we are providing the full weight of the federal government alongside many of our non-government partners to ensure that we are doing those critical life-saving, life-sustaining operations at the moment, but we clearly have our eye on not just Florida, but other states that are going to get impending impacts from Hurricane Ian.
How are you thinking about balancing the needs from Ian in Florida with the anticipated needs that you're going to have when Ian slams into the Carolina coast tomorrow?
So in the same way that we are hand in glove with our colleagues at the state of Florida and their State Emergency Operations Center, FEMA is coordinating and working closely with the federal emergency management agencies and the other agencies in both North and South Carolina. We know, right, people are going to depend on us in their time of need, and FEMA, as with every disaster, is working closely not just with our state counterparts, but our local officials as well, as they manage not just the impacts from Hurricane Ian, but also we have our colleagues throughout the country addressing other disasters as well.
Marcus Coleman, thank you so much for being with us on what I know has been probably a sleepless 48 hours, if not longer, for you. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
The travel impacts are real here. We know that Ian is causing flights across Florida to basically grind to a total stop. You have a lot of people stranded in the state. They're looking for the green light to try to get back home. I want to bring in Tom Costello, one of our reporters, our chief correspondent covering aviation for us. What are we seeing? What's happening tonight? And what kind of a domino effect is that happening?
Florida is essentially closed. Yeah. It's going to stay closed. The exception being Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So if you're trying to get into or out of that area, chances are you're going to make it. But take a look at the list of airports in Florida that remain closed at this hour. We have a total, by the way, of about 2,200 flight cancellations, 2,000 flight cancellations, sorry, 2,200 delays in total. Here's the list. Jacksonville, Orlando, Melbourne, Tampa hopes to get up and running tomorrow. We'll see. Orlando, we'll see if that happens. They've got a lot of water there. St. Pete probably will be fine tomorrow. And then Sarasota, Bradenton, still playing this by ear. Southwest Florida down, of course, in the area that was hit so hard. And Naples still closed as well. But we are watching other airports. Take a look at the FlightAware misery map. Now, I watched this map closely, to be honest with you, and there's several ways to break this down. But this gives you a sense of the airports right now. There you go. Thank you. The airports that have misery. Notice, Hallie, there is, other than Miami, which has just a little bit of red, there's no other airports down in Florida. Why? Because they're closed. right? You can't have misery if you're closed completely.
Right. You're off the map.
They're off the map. That's right. So the airports that are right now experiencing some delays, as you can see, New York City area, D.C. area, Miami a little bit. This kind of looks like a typical day, to be honest, not that dramatic. And the list on the right, I won't bore you with all the details. That's the list of every airport right now experiencing delays and cancellations.
So is this a success story when it comes to travel impacts, Tom? The fact that there wasn't a huge snafu with flights around the country with these major Florida airports being shut down?
2,000 flights on a major hurricane, that's not bad. And important to note that the airlines, of course, pulled all of their planes out of harm's way. They were not sitting there on the field in Tampa to get hammered. We're going to be watching to see who reopens, but other airports we're going to watch closely. Charleston, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, as well as Savannah. So all of those airports, as the storm tracks north, are going to be having to make a decision. When do they decide that they're going to cease operations? 35 to 40 miles per hour winds, that's usually the limit. That's when they say, sorry, we're going to cancel operations. And the airlines on their own are going to pull out of there and say, we're not going to risk a problem.
Presumably, if you're Savannah, you're not sitting there waiting. I mean, it's a hurricane now.
Right.
The expectation is that would close, for example.
100%.
Right?
I actually just now checked the FAA website to see if they're closed or Charleston. They're not yet, but that doesn't mean anybody's flying in.
That's right. That's a great point. Tom Costello, thank you for being on top of that for us. Appreciate it. A lot of people, we talk about flights, you probably don't like turbulence, right? Well, check out this video.
Oh, there goes the signs. There goes the beds. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's turbulent. This team of hurricane hunters with NOAA flying right into Hurricane Ian, basically cutting across the storm directly into the eye. Look at that. They're in the storm. They're collecting information, real-time scientific data to help understand hurricanes. And you know that flying into Hurricane Ian has been an intense experience for members of the crew, including one person on yesterday's mission who says the storm rocked our whole world. Joining me now is Captain Garrett Black, an airman who flew into Hurricane Ian yesterday. Captain Black, thank you for being with us. What was that like? You've done a lot of these missions. How did Ian compare?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely probably one of the roughest rides I've experienced. That goes back through quite a few different major hurricanes over the last 5 years. So it was a very bumpy, I would say severe turbulence, a lot of lightning, a lot of hail. Overall, a pretty rough ride.
You're not doing it for fun. You're not on a joyride for fun. You're doing it for science, right? Talk about the info you were able to get from this flight. Why is that important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, satellites and everything are great for the Hurricane Center to be able to use to understand and forecast these hurricanes. But there's such a missing ingredient. And so that's where we're able to fly our C-130Js into the storm and really collect the data that's going on real time in the eye wall and in the center of the storm that paints a whole different picture at times to the Hurricane Center forecasters so they know exactly what's going on.
I have to tell you, I'm a frequent flyer, but I look at that video of your colleagues on that mission, and I'm like, nope, no way. How is it that the plane doesn't come apart? You know what I mean? Like, how does that even stay in the air at that point?
Yeah, I mean, NOAA's P3 there is pretty similar structurally to our Air Force C-130, but they're just very tough planes, and the pilot and the air crew is very well experienced and be trained in the off season to just be able to handle, as far as a crew, on how to, to navigate these kind of weather events. Our pilots yesterday did an outstanding job, and so we're definitely very thankful.
What do you want people to know about missions like these and why they're so important, and specifically about Hurricane Ian itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's, so much to understand with these difficult storms, and obviously seeing the videos and images coming out of Florida now, they clearly have such a devastating impact. And so, we just hope that people are paying attention to the National Hurricane Center, to their local National Weather Services and emergency managers, and that they're listening. We're obviously going through these very rough rides, as you can see from the NOAA video here. And we just hope that we're doing this and collecting the data so people take these warnings seriously and evacuate if they're told to evacuate. The last thing we want is to see, people in unfortunate circumstances.
Captain Garrett Black, thank you very much for being with us and for giving us kind of an inside look at what that experience is like. Appreciate it. I want to go now to Naples, Florida, where NBC's Sam Brock is joining us now. Sam, tell us what you're seeing.
Hi, Hallie. Good to see you. Behind me is the Naples iconic fishing pier, which is about half the size that it used to be. 24 hours ago, it was 1,000 feet. Half of that was ripped off. It's now 500 feet. Certainly, it's kind of weird to look at a beautiful vista like this, understanding what the area has been through. Because yesterday, Hallie, the streets of Naples were flooded with 7 feet of storm surge. I was just talking to the mayor, and she was walking me around a building, showing me the floodwater mark 5 or 6 feet up onto the wall of the government building. Now, you hear about Naples, the first thing you think, of course, is that and the rescues, the beautiful homes out here. $200 million worth of property damage, private property so far. I'm told from the city manager that is a conservative estimate. But today we really got a window, Hallie, into what this means for communities like this that were just blasted by Hurricane Ian, and now they're forced to reckon with what's going to happen in their personal lives. I spoke with a business owner right off the main strip in downtown Naples, and she talked about the fact she was going to open her custom suits and shoe store tomorrow or the next day, the next couple of days. And then this happened, and she saw that viral video of firefighters looking at 4 to 5 feet of water in the fire station, not able to get their truck out. Her business is right down the street from that, and at that point, this woman knew, that's it. My hopes and dreams, my life savings that I just spent on a business.
You know what happens when comms are a little bit tricky. That's what happened. This is live television. This is live television during hurricane coverage. Even though the hurricane has passed by, obviously it's still tricky given that cell phone towers in some places are down. Cell coverage is a little funky. I'm hearing that we have Sam back. Hi, Sam.
What?
Feel free to finish your sentence, Sam, if you're... I sure can. If you want to finish your sentence, you're welcome to. We got 30 seconds left in show.
We're back. My point is that there are just so many ways people were impacted by this hurricane. Whether it's they lost their home, they lost their livelihood, or they're scarred emotionally for the rest of their lives. We're seeing little pieces of that play out here in the days already that have happened and the ones to come.
Sam Brock, our thanks to you and your team out there in Naples. I know your crew is working just as hard as you are. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you, and thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Again, Hurricane Ian set to make landfall on the coast of the Carolinas now tomorrow. We'll have continuing coverage right here on NBC News Now of this deadly storm. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.